the way you distribute products, that all has to be diversified. So I think those trends of friendshoring or reshoring, those are real, and I think those continue, and I think those are going to benefit a lot of countries like in India or Malaysia, Japan, and Mexico. And then I think if you want to focus specifically on this crisis right now, there's obviously a real potential for elevated violence in the Middle East. And you think about, okay, what sectors could be affected by that in my portfolio? Clearly, any kind of elevation is probably going to show up in higher oil price, higher crude oil. And what industries does that affect? Leisure, airlines, cruise ships, hotel, lodging, gaming. So there's these near-term impacts. You have to sort of think through those, but also the bigger secular moves.
Jonathan, from your perspective, how do you think about geopolitics, deglobalization? How's it affecting how you're thinking?
A lot. Michael gave a really good answer. I think that there are a couple of things to really build upon, and in some sense, our benchmarks are global. We're a global investor, and so I'll answer the question in a couple of different ways. We're in the midst of a strategic asset allocation exercise. This time when we're doing it, we are going to use different capital market assumptions with and without certain countries, just to figure out a way to articulate certain risks. I think we're also mindful that there are risks here domestically, and one of the things that we do there is try to speak with a louder voice and communicate with regulators and advocate for certain matters, be it transparency and otherwise. A different way to answer it is the importance of we work with State Street, maybe a different part of State Street, but on the custody side, in that go back a year or so ago with Russia-Ukraine, it was a live exercise in terms of what happens to your assets that are custodied in a certain geography. And once again, recognizing human tragedy, putting that aside, we're paying benefit payments to retirees every month, and that is a responsibility we have. We have to make sure that we have access to capital that we think we have access to. So where do you value it at, and how do you make sure that if we have custody accounts in 60 some odd countries, are those assets, can we access it? How do we tabletop and make sure that we can access it and it's valued properly? Then another way to think about geopolitics is the importance of technology. I would say that we use technology in terms of managing our portfolio more than we ever have. And part of that is making sure that we have position level detail such that we can run different scenarios, model different things, and do it in a way that we maybe couldn't have or didn't 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And many of these scenarios that we run and the way we stress our portfolio really tries to articulate different types of geopolitical factors that maybe we need to be cognizant of today, because it is a new and different environment, not just because of fixed income, but maybe fixed income plays into what's going to happen to fixed income investments in the U.S. versus other countries, and then you layer on currencies, but technology, ODD, you name it, are really critical aspects to the geopolitical question.
Thank you. Let me change tack slightly. We touched upon it, but the credit market landscape spreads in fixed income. You mentioned it's a good period for fixed income. How do you think some corporate structured products, are current valuations realistic, are current spreads realistic? What's the sort of near-term outlook as you see it? Nancy, I'm going to throw that to you first.
Okay, well, maybe just to summarize, I see there are two main risks in fixed income, right? There's duration, which is the sensitivity of the portfolio to interest rates, and then there's spread risk. Now, within spread risk, 99%, call it, of fixed income funds take either two types of spread risk: credit spread risk or mortgage risk, which is, homeowners in the United States are long the option to prepay. So any place that you have, say, the Barclays Ag Index, a third of that bond portfolio is actually short volatility, because whenever you're short an option, you're short vol. And so that's been one of our big education things, is like, look, it's been good to be short volatility over the last 40 years, because we've been generally in a bull market for fixed income. We've also had the Fed buying bonds really since 2009 with QE. Now we're reversing that, and we're going into quantitative tightening. The US Treasury has to refinance a third of our debt in the next year. And who owns our debt? A third of it is owned by the Fed itself. A third of it is owned by foreigners, with China and Japan being the top two owners, and then the rest by us in the room. And so it's a really, really important time to be aware of kind of spread risk. And the problem, as Michael said, is a lot of money has been going into short duration. Short duration sounds great, but the trick is it's kind of like a fake strategy name, because it's actually still long duration. It really should be called less long. So it's actually, right? Like, even a short duration fund, it's still long duration, it just has less duration. And so the problem is that all this money has been going into short duration because they're worried about interest rates, but that has moved credit spreads. We were actually talking about this earlier. The way I became the head of credit and rates at Goldman Prop was in 2001 and 2002. Credit curves invert in periods of risk off. And right now, the 1-year CDX market, so this is the credit spread risk to take investment grade risk in credit, guess where it is? 16 basis points. That can only go to 0, right? If you own something with credit spread, you want credit spreads to tighten. And when equities sell off, credit spreads widen because it's all corporate risk. So the 5-year IG market in the CDX market is 75 basis points. 16 basis points for 1-year credit risk is just a sign of all of this money flowing into short duration. And short duration, if it's governments, it's fine, but if it doesn't take a lot of duration risk, and they have, typically there's a lot of structured credit in short duration, which is linear levered mortgages, right? A Fed's balance sheet, a third of it is mortgages. Do you really want to have a bunch of linear levered derivatives in your short duration fund? Like, probably not. And then a lot of it takes credit risk. And credit spreads, credit curves are just like vol curves. When there's a period of risk off, credit curves invert. Because think about it, if you were the treasurer of a corporate and you're borrowing money to fund your operations, you either have to pay back the loan or you have to amend and extend. So it's definitely a tricky time for investors. And so just be aware, like when you're looking at your portfolios in short duration, look to see, do they have the 3-letter acronyms, right? Anytime you see the 3-letter acronyms, that's structured credit, which is linear levered derivatives inside of mortgages. And then look at the credit risk that's inside some of these strategies. So it's really important not to go on name only. And just remember, the one takeaway is short duration is kind of like a fake name, right? It's all bonds have duration, all of them. And if you have short duration, you just have to be really careful about the credit risk. Because in my opinion, you're just not getting paid to take short duration credit. It's better to term it out and have, the ability to make more money with a longer duration credit bond than a short duration, because the only place credit spreads can go is 0.
So you said amend and
extend, A&E.
Amend and extend.
Amend and
Not
extend.
pretend.
Yeah.
Amend and
I just pretend and extend.
Whatever.
Michael, thoughts on credit from you?
Yeah, just talking about the current state of spreads, whether it's in high yield corporate credit, investment grade corporate credit. I guess the first thing I would say is it's really difficult to look at spreads historically and then try to draw a conclusion solely from the historical average range is here and this is where we are, so therefore spreads are either cheap or rich. You really have to kind of look at the intersection fundamentals and valuation. So you kind of have to think about the current spread environment in the context of what fundamentals look like. So we spend a lot of time doing that, really trying to decipher what do those fundamentals look like right now, and how do we think they're going to evolve over the next 2 to 3 quarters, and what's the variability of how that can evolve. When you look at the current state of spreads, we would say that a couple things. One, they look reasonable right now, given valuations. They're not cheap. We wouldn't make that argument. But I also wouldn't say that they flag as being rich. A couple nuances. The high yield market, the U.S. high yield market in particular, to us, looks pretty compelling. And you might say, okay, wait a minute, spreads where they are right now, we're kind of at or somewhere close to historical averages. Is that really that compelling? I think there's a secular trend in high yield that's taking place, and it's distorting how you should view or look at and think about valuations. And Nancy talked about private credit and how private credit has evolved, and it really exploded. It's as big as the high yield market right now. And what has happened is a lot of the, let's call them smaller to maybe mid-sized companies that were in the high yield market, and a lot of times these smaller companies would have a lower rating profile, maybe triple C, low single B. A lot of those companies have better financing alternatives in private credit. Private credit will give them a better total financing package. And so you really have seen a pretty dramatic reduction in lower quality, higher beta, high yield out of the index, out of the market, and you're seeing more and more double Bs in the market. So the composition of the market today is a higher quality market than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. So I think you kind of have to think about that as you're looking at historical spreads. So we would say high yield spreads look reasonable, maybe even a little cheap right now at current valuations. I mentioned you kind of have to anticipate some variability in that. What can happen with the economy and how will that affect your positioning? So we would skew a portfolio more towards higher quality high yield. It's a nice risk reward where if the economy gets to a point where it's, let's call it a soft landing, growth holds up okay, you're going to do very well owning solid double B names. If things get a little worse, we get slip into a mild recession or something more severe, just given the health of the balance sheet, the strength of fundamentals, I think there's a better, much more likely path for being resilient and enduring in that kind of environment. You'd still see some spread widening. You don't have to worry about impairment. And then on the investment grade market, I'll just be quick on this. I think that is a little bit of the opposite. It's been a migration more towards triple B, away from triple A, single A, and double A and single A, into more triple Bs. So there, when you think about that market, I would be cognizant that market, on a secular basis, you're seeing a slight deterioration, just as defined by ratings. So, but that market too, to us, looks reasonable. Maybe high yield a little cheap, investment grade corporate credit, let's call it fair value.
Let me change tack. I want to talk about ESG. So, how important is ESG in your portfolios? Are you coming under more pressure from investors and owners to increase your focus there? How are you tackling it, Jonathan?
Well, I'll answer that with the statement that I'm a candidate for the board of the UN Principles for Responsible Investment. So it is really important to me. So if you're an asset owner, vote. Look at all the candidates, obviously, and then make sure you
They vote for you.
I would say for Lacera, what responsible investing, what responsible stewardship is, it's a process to us and not a product. I think when part of the polarization about ESG, do you do it, do you not do it, is because it's in many ways been productized unnecessarily. Our belief is that we need to widen the aperture as much as possible, incorporate as many factors to identify what key risks and opportunities are, and it may vary by industry, by geography, but we have a fiduciary duty to put as many inputs as possible into our underwriting, our analysis, our monitoring, and our portfolio construction. So ESG is part of every investment that we make, in terms of evaluating the firms we do business with, in terms of evaluating the different strategies that we look at, and that holds true with monitoring the portfolio. It holds true with our asset allocation. We've sensitized our capital market assumptions, both in terms of risk and volatility for different climate scenarios. We do a carbon footprinting of a portfolio on an annual basis. We're very involved as it relates to our proxy voting, from a governance standpoint. Social, we've expanded our responsible contractor policy. We have a comprehensive program called Lucera Tide towards inclusion, diversity, and equity. So all this is done to make sure that we have the best inputs in order to get the best outcomes for our portfolio. So it's something that is really important to us.
Michael, any thoughts?
I think Jonathan hit on a lot of great points there. The thing I would say about Western Asset as we think about ESG, the money is not ours. We're not managing our own money. We're managing our clients' money, and we have a whole array of different clients. ESG is important to them, and so therefore it's important to us, and we have to make it really ingrained and embedded in our entire investment process. And I think that the industry's been going that way, really kind of started in Europe and in Australia. We saw real big emphasis a decade ago on ESG. So I think in the U.S. it's playing a little bit of catch up, but what I would say is that just give an example in our corporate credit process, the way our research analysts work and engage with companies, there's a lot more ESG factors that are actually being measured and being integrated and incorporated into the analysis. And you really want to tie that also in with investment outcomes. So it's not simply trying to get a carbon score, but also try to measure the potential threat or impact that carbon score has on profitability, on the ability to generate cash flow and free cash flow. So there's a lot. Our process really has a lot more quantitative tools now where we can use those in our ESG analysis. We actually mandate that our research analysts have a certain number of engagements with companies, which I think is a really important part of ESG. Is you want to promote change in the right direction. So it's important that companies know they're in effect, if they're a violator of let's stick with the carbon example, that it's costing them money from just the ability to finance their business. They could get a cheaper rate on their bond if they scored better in that particular metric. And that engagement and that back and forth with companies, I think, is really important, and is really almost has to be part of your ESG process. You really want to move the needle going forward.
Okay, we have a few minutes left, so I want to open up to the audience. Any questions for our panel from any of you? No one's got any questions? Oh, one over there, yeah.
The upcoming elections, do you feel that those are an important factor to destabilize markets or not? Certainly what's happened in the House of Representatives is pretty remarkable. And I was just wondering, when you look at the next 12 months, how are you looking at the effect of U.S. elections on markets?
Who wants to take that? Who wants to weigh in on US politics?
I'll pass.
Very wise.
Uh-oh, we got a taker here.
I knew
see Nancy
that.
turning her mic
Nancy wants
on.
to step up.
I'll chime in, just, not making a political view at all, but it's definitely, I think, going to mean a lot more volatility for markets. And I think, it's really important to understand that when you have things like the Ag Index, right? The Ag Index is a really old index. It used to be the Lehman Ag, then it was the Barclays Ag, now it's called the Bloomberg Ag. There's 0 inflation-protected bonds in the Ag, and a third of the Ag is actually short vol because it's mortgages, right? Homeowners are on the option to prepay if you own a financial mortgage or short volatility. So I think as we head into periods of whether it's geopolitical, regular politics, it's definitely going to be an increase probably in volatility. And so I think it's really important to understand in your bond portfolios in particular where you have that short convexity, that short volatility exposure. And just, I think the trick is to be diversified. And diversification can't just be like, it's pretty hard because sometimes people go off of strategy names, right? Like, my strategy doesn't have a bucket, right? Like, IVOL doesn't really fit anywhere. It's inflation protected bonds, but it's interest rate volatility. And so I think the one thing I would say is when you're looking at whether it's ESG or diversity, inclusion, like all these things, if you take a step back, like what's the point? It's not to have groupthink. And the problem is that a lot of the institutional community is groupthink because it's all about benchmarking. And so when you have a strategy that you're like, it doesn't fit into a benchmark, it's probably not inside your portfolio. And so I would just say, I don't know, obviously it's going to be, tricky time as we head into whatever the future holds, it's unknown. But in the interest rate volatility markets, the vol curve is downward sloping. Like, think about how crazy that is. That means you can buy volatility longer dated and it's lower than front dated volatility. It's a downward sloping curve. And so I think it's a great opportunity for investors to wake up and realize that in your bond portfolio, about a third of it is short vol. And it's not the VIX we're talking about, it's fixed income vol. And just to be aware and to try to diversify, but you gotta be careful with all the benchmarking that's happened because some strategies don't really have a benchmark, right? They're new, they're innovative. They're like the inflation protected bond market, did you guys know this fun fact? It only started, the US Treasury started issuing TIPS in 1997, right? So people look at inflation, what happened in the 70s and 80s, there was no interest rate derivatives market back then. There was no inflation protected bond market back then. So you just have to know what you own and don't go by name only.
Anyone else? Any questions? Yes, back there.
Yes,
There's a microphone just coming to you now. There.
thank you. Do you prefer a U.S. bond portfolio or a global bond portfolio with the currency hedged out? Number one. Number two, as to tips, what percent of a fixed income portfolio do you think should be in tips today? So global versus domestic and
So good
tips.
questions. I would say that a global portfolio hedged back to U.S. dollar has a higher probability to achieve better risk-adjusted returns over a longer period of time. That sounds like a very generic answer, but it's really what Nancy was just talking about, diversification. You're getting broader diversification. When you take on that risk, obviously that's a longer term view that I was talking about, that over a long period of time, you should have better risk-adjusted returns with a global portfolio that's hedged back to U.S. dollar. That can vary a lot quarter by quarter, depending how that portfolio is weighted. You've got a lot of currency risk in there. So, it's a difficult question to answer, which is why I was answering it, from more of a bigger, broader thematic standpoint. And the other question on tips, again, that's it's very specific to the investor and the mandate. I think having some inflation protection in a portfolio, especially a fixed income portfolio, you know, it's essential. It's a great diversifier of risk in fixed income markets. I do tend to think the TIPS market gets overlooked a little bit. It's you know, a bit of a nuanced market that you know, is a little bit difficult to understand. But I actually think it's a well-designed product that you know, makes sense in a diversified fixed income portfolio. But you know, it really kind of depends on the investor. You know, how much of your assets are in fixed income, what you're trying to solve for. So, sorry, I don't have a great answer for that.
On TIPS, we have one of our 4 asset categories is real assets and inflation hedges, and we group TIPS in that asset category with core real estate, infrastructure, natural resources, and I think our TIPS allocation is about 3%.
The only thing I'll chime in to say about TIPS is TIPS only reset with one index, and that index is the Consumer Price Index. And the CPI is an index that even the Fed does not use, right? Even the Fed, they're focused more on PC and survey data or core CPI. The problem with TIPS by themselves is it only resets with the CPI, and a third of the CPI is actually rent. It's owner-occupied rent in the shelter component. And so I equate it to sort of saying, look, you would never buy the Russell or NASDAQ or Dow Jones and say, ta-da, I have the US equity market. TIPS by themselves are, I think, not sufficient because it's only CPI inflation. And that's just an index, right? And so I know with our fund, we own, you know, we have $725 million allocated to TIPS. So we like TIPS, but then we try to fix the problems with TIPS because all TIPS are long duration, right? Even a short duration TIP is long duration. So they all lose money when real yields go higher. And that's kind of one of the downsides with TIPS is it's a pretty new market. It is pretty complicated. Like real yields are not, you know, it's definitely, and they create phantom income as well, which I think, not to go off on a tangent, but I think that's where the ETF wrapper can really be effective. We use a passive ETF index to do all of our bond trading in kind, and that way we can avoid capital gains tax, because TIPS are treasuries, which are capital assets. So I think the one thing with TIPS is it's tricky as a direct owner of them. If you're a pension, it's fine because you don't pay taxes, but if you're a taxable account, you have to pay tax on the phantom income, which is complicated. So I think TIPS are good, but they need kind of a tweak because TIPS are pretty new and they're sort of in name only, in my opinion.
I could talk to the 3 of you all night. Unfortunately, they won't allow us to do that. We are out of time, so thank you very much for that. Okay, one more to go. It's my pleasure. ACFC is one of the world's only majority female-founded and run professional sports teams. It was founded with Academy Award-winning actress Natalie Portman and technology venture capitalist Karen Norton. Julie has won a whole host of awards and accolades, and what she doesn't know about the business of sport really is not worth knowing. So please, welcome Julie, and I'll let her introduce her panel.
Thank you. I am highly conscious that we are in the way of your cocktails and food after a long day talking about TIPS and CPI indexes and God knows what. So this should be a lot more entertaining and exciting because you have 2 of my very good friends up here, Kathleen Schlossman from the LA Sports and Entertainment Council and Renata Simrel from the LA 84 Foundation and Play Equity Fund. And we are going to have basically a conversation that we would have over one of our monthly breakfasts that we have, minus the sort of bitching and whining about people we don't like. But the important part we'll talk about with you. And as I was walking in here, what caught my eye was the purpose that you all have gathered here today, which is getting together to make the world better through investing. And what you see up here are 3 women that get together to make the world better through sports. And that's what we're going to talk about for the next 40 minutes. So before we get started, I would love for you each just to introduce yourselves. And then we'll talk a little bit about LA and the sports market, why sports is so important, why it's growing in Los Angeles, how you can play a role, and take any questions that you might have as well. So, or we're not even.
She's such a boss lady.
You go ahead.
Oh. Good to be with you guys. Hopefully we'll be entertaining for you. I'm Renata Simrel. As Julie mentioned, I'm president and CEO of the LA84 Foundation, and that's the legacy of the 1984 Olympic Games. How many people remember the 1984 Olympic Games? Thank goodness I'm not the oldest person in this room. Because lots of folks that we talked to weren't even born during the 1984 Olympic Games. My journey to philanthropy has been an unusual one. I had a decade in real estate development, also played a role in politics, both at the council level and was deputy mayor for economic development and housing. Did a little stint at a sports team that you might know that got kicked out of the playoffs in a sweep, the LA Dodgers, still hurting about that one. And I've been running the foundation for about 8 years. But to Julie's point about the work that we do at the foundation, and really the trajectory of my career has been about a double bottom line. How can you do well and do good at the same time?
Hi, I'm Kathy Schlossman. I'm president and CEO of the Los Angeles Sports and Entertainment Commission. And our mission is to help bring major sporting and entertainment events to our city, to our region, that are bringing economic impact and community impact. My background, I was in commercial real estate at CBRE for a number of years, and then have been in this role for a number of years as well. I'm very excited about what we have to talk about today, and it was a pretty exciting decade of opportunity, as they mentioned.
So Kathy, you talked about wanting to bring the biggest sporting events here to Los Angeles. And I know you said at the beginning, but people were talking. So just to reiterate, we've had the Super Bowl, College Football Playoffs, National Championship, US Open Men's Golf, FIFA World Cup is coming here, the Olympic and the Paralympic Games are coming in 28. How have we been able to get so many events in such a short period of time? What has changed in the last 4 years?
You forgot the All-Star Game in 2018.
That's right, MLS All-Star Game.
And a number of other events that we're bidding on. But I think what's changed, LA has always been a great sports and entertainment city where we have great weather, entertainment, venues, etc. But I always tell people that our life changed in 2016, in January of 2016, when Stan Kroenke got the rights to move the Rams back to Los Angeles and said he was going to build this magnificent, which he did, stadium, SoFi Stadium at Hollywood Park. It was a real game changer for us because while we had all these other assets in Los Angeles, we had two very nice, the Coliseum, but older stadiums that didn't have a lot of the suite product that these events want. So once that was announced, immediately, it was a game changer for us in terms of the events pursuing us, wanting to come to Los Angeles, and the phone started ringing, the other way, and people wanting to come here and be here. And since that time, as Julie said, we've had this just amazing run of events. We have a number of really great events coming in the future.
I would add, if I could, just the investment in our sports venue infrastructure. So in addition to SoFi Stadium, you have LA Football Club. That's at Expo Center where Angel City Football Club plays. You also have USC that took the long-term lease from the Coliseum Commission, is investing no less than $150 million. For those of you Trojan fans out there, we're hurting too. But if you've seen the improvement that they've done to the Coliseum, and then certainly the extraordinary investment that the Dodgers have made in modernizing a historic structure, we truly have an abundance of riches. That coupled with the transportation network that has grown over the last 20 years in particular, in terms of new rail lines, airport venues. I mean, the fact that we're going to have a consolidated car rental facility and a rail line into the airport really creates a game changer in terms of being able to host these incredibly well-attended, in some cases like the Olympics and the World Cup, these international events that do drive tourism and economic value to the region of Southern California.
So to drill down a little bit on events, I think when we think about the Super Bowl or National Championship or US Open, it's like, we have a great weekend of sports, right? And then the teams go away and the next season rolls in and we've moved on. But I think what a lot of people don't know is that there is an incredible legacy that is left behind when we have these incredible sporting events in Los Angeles, whether it's the Super Bowl or the Olympics. And so, Kathy, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about specifically the Super Bowl and the legacy that is staying, that is remaining because of the work that you did at the Super Bowl. And then Renata, I'd love to go back in time to 1984 and the LA 84 Olympics and what the LA 84 Foundation is, why does it exist, what is its purpose, and how do we think about that rolling into 28. So Kathy, love you to talk about the legacy of these events.
Yeah, so just looking at Super Bowl specifically, so these events are great, they're exciting, you know, like you said, it's a week of events, parties, activities, drives economic impact, and we say community impact, but people really don't they don't understand how deep that goes. So what's really important for us when we're spending a lot of money to bring these events here. First off, to host an event like a Super Bowl costs a host city between $40 and $50 million to host.
Can you say that again? Because I don't think they heard you. I don't think they heard you.
Yeah,
It
it costs the host city between $40 to $50 million to
And how do we pay for that? The government gives us that money, right?
Oh, yeah, exactly, in the city, no. We unfortunately don't have public money in Los Angeles or in the state of California, so that money has to be privately fundraised. So to bring these events that bring all this great economic and community impact, we have to raise the money to bring it, to host it, to bring all this incredible impact to the city. So the way we do that is making sure that this event can't just be about the people who can afford the dollars to go to Super Bowl. There's only going to be 70,000 people there. It has to be, what is this event going to do for the community? And so what we do on all of these events is make sure they leave a legacy in a bunch of different areas. First is making sure that the local diverse businesses have an opportunity to get business around all these parties and events and things that happen, that it's not just something that some out-of-towners come in and get all the opportunities. We have to make sure that we give our local diverse businesses an opportunity. So we created a program called Business Connect, which actually the NFL created, brought with them with Super Bowl, and we have since continued it on to make sure we're giving these companies a chance to participate. But the second piece of it is a legacy. And it's not just the legacy it leaves behind, there's actually a legacy that we can build as we go up to it. And it was really important to us not to go out. The other Super Bowl cities will do is they'll come up with some great idea that sounds good at the time of what they want to do for a legacy. And then they'll build it, they'll do it up until the event, and then the event's over, nobody's around to service it afterward, nobody's around to continue, and it goes away. So yeah, they made some impact, but it wasn't lasting impact. We wanted to make sure with every major event we brought and the legacy program that we created, that was going to be sustainable. And we also wanted to not just, again, create something new. So we said, okay, who is the expert in our market in doing good work with community organizations? The LA 84 Foundation. Been around since 1984, going to be around a lot longer. They know it, they do it every day. They know who the good organizations are, who we should support. And so I went to Renata and I said, okay, what should we do? What should our theme be? And Renata said, this was right during the middle of COVID when we were planning Super Bowl 2022. And she said, okay, there's so much bad stuff out there. Why don't we use all the media and attention and excitement around Super Bowl and shine the light on the organizations that are already here in our city doing good work on youth sports, social justice, and workforce development. Let's lift them up. Let's not go out and create a brand new program. Let's take the grant money we're going to have. Let's take the media attention. Let's create promotional videos. And let's really lift up their work. And we decided to go out and choose 56, not because it was Super Bowl 56 nonprofit organizations. A year before the Super Bowl, we announced it. We rolled it out down at SoFi Stadium. We did a full-on press conference where they ran out of the tunnel. They were on the field at SoFi Stadium. We did a full media press conference again to get them attention. Because attention we didn't need to use the media attention to sell the game. Everybody was going to watch the game. We needed to use that media attention to focus on the people that were doing the great work in our city.
I think you might want to tee the video up.
Can you roll the
Can you
video?
roll that video? Just show you a video of one of the 56.
We're waiting for it to come up. So of the 56 organizations, we went out and did a promotional video that they could use to
We want
promote
our
themselves.
communities to be safer. And I think the way that we do that is we strengthen relationships. And the way that we strengthen relationships is that we give people an opportunity to build relationships. And that's what we're doing at Project Blue with our law enforcement, with our community, and we're starting with our young people. Our mission at Project Blue is to use youth programming to create safer communities where our police officers, where our young people, where our parents and family and community members are working in one accord just with one common goal. And as a result of that, our youth and young people are launched into bright, successful futures. We work with various youth programs that already exist within the community. It's different in those terms of how we want to really track what these programs are doing, improve it in terms of storytelling and pictures for sure, but also in measurable impact in terms of metrics and data.
I think Project Blue forming and highlighting programs in the community and having that police involvement, whether it's mentorship through some of the programs I have, really shows the community kind of who we are. We're not just a uniform or a badge, and they get to see us. And again, that builds trust. They let down those walls. And it's twofold. It helps us as police officers understand our community that we serve.
They have been guiding us through a process of how to expand and how to keep building upon ourselves and just providing any resources we need.
So when we received the news from the LA Super Bowl host committee and the NFL, I was surprised. It was my first grant within Project Blue, and it was a big thing for me, right? Just that level of excitement that we got recognized. And then when I got to go to the event and I saw all of those programs and organizations around, that's when it really became real. It was like, whoa, we're recognized amongst some incredible people.
So I think that it really shows when you help the youth in any community that you can bridge that gap between the police and the community. And I think it starts with the youth. And Project Blue is really all about kind of highlighting all this great work that community members and the police are doing to bridge that gap.
Follow us online at Project Blue LA on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity. God bless.
Round of applause for Project Blue. You guys are in the investment business and you work in multiples, right? And this program is a multiplier effect. Christine Devine, we wanted to use the opportunity on our social platforms and the NFL platforms to really, as Kathy said, highlight organizations that are doing great work in the community. And Mark's comment about the grant was relatively small from our perspective, but from their perspective it was huge, and just being seen was incredible. But Christine Devine from KT Channel 11 actually picked up one of our stories and was so moved by just the stories of impact that she did a whole series leading up to the Super Bowl and after the Super Bowl, and then is repeating it again this year. And so the multiplier effect is more people know about Project Blue and the other 55 organizations. They're funding those organizations. They've expanded their donor base, and then they're able to sort of get the word out of the work that they're doing to the community. And so it's been extraordinary. And the reason that we came up with this concept of legacy in this way is that as the LA84 Foundation, it was the first privately financed, or the LA84 Olympics was the first privately financed games in the history of the Olympics. And it is still to this day the most successfully financed games ever. We raised $235.5 million in 1984. And it was an improbable journey. And that when the organizer said, if we were to have a surplus or money left over, that a portion of that surplus would come to start a youth sports foundation. And so we received 20% of that, $93 million. And since the 40 years of our existence, we've invested those in direct service grants, infrastructure, coaching, education, and had extraordinary results. And it always dawned on me that we have these major sporting events, not just in Los Angeles, but across the globe. And we're one of the very few, if any, organization that have established an endowment to be a gift that keeps on giving. So why don't we do that when the Super Bowl comes, when the World Cup comes, so that we're able to sustain the revenue that these community-based organizations need, and then we're able to leverage those dollars with other philanthropic giving, individual giving, so that there's that multiplier effect. And so that's the work that the LA84 Foundation has been doing. The partnership that we have with the Super Bowl, with, I should say, the host committee, so the Super Bowl, the college football playoffs, and then hopefully we'll be managing the legacy for the World Cup if Kathy will have us back, is that the gap between those young people who have access to sport playing movement and the communities that we serve isn't once like it was when you guys were kids. You don't have recess, you don't have PE, you don't have after-school sports, safe passage to parks, and so that gap of access for kids has grown tremendous. And the transformative benefits that young people get from sports. How many people played sports growing up? I loved it. So you know about the teamwork, resiliency, regulation of your behavior, learning how to win with grace, weather defeat, pick yourself up again. So when you think about sports' ability to transform individuals, and then you think about, how many are Dodger fans? Right? What? Are you guys from Los Angeles or what? All right, how many Laker fans?
Okay, how many Angel City Football Club fans? Now you should all raise your hand because that's a softball question. But so you played sports, you watch sports. There's some sports fans in the audience. Is the way in which sports brings communities together, right? It doesn't matter what religion you are, what sex you are, how old you are. I mean, if you're rooting for the Lakers or the Dodgers or Angel City Football Club, sports has this unique opportunity to bind. Mark May and LAPD. Despite the challenges that we have in our society with regard to black and brown communities in LAPD, they're showing a more positive way that when you bring communities together through sports, magic happens. And so that's the work that we've been doing through our Play Equity Fund. The Play Equity Fund, which is our charitable organization that we started about 5 years ago, is really trying to level the playing field so that all young people have access to sport, play, and movement. And then hopefully with all of these major sporting events, we're starting to, I wouldn't say hopefully, we are starting to replicate the work that we're doing in Los Angeles and other parts of the country like Seattle, Chicago, Washington, D.C., Las Vegas is interested in replicating some of the work that we do. So again, that multiplier effect in terms of the work that we're doing here in Los Angeles is starting to spread across the country.
Speaking about a multiplier effect, do you want to tell our audience about the Alliance?
Sure. I don't believe that it's actually formed, but after the murder of George Floyd in 2019, at the time, 11 professional sports team presidents got together. And they were all, as many of you in this room likely were, just moved by the series of violence that had occurred and was across every social media platform, television media platform. And they wanted to do something more than their charity and philanthropy. And we have an abundance of riches with our sports teams that are so charitable in the communities that they serve. Angel City Football Club, breaking the mold in that regard. And so I was invited to the conversation, and the results of that was a partnership, a historic partnership with all 11, and now 12, because when Angel City Football Club came on, they were like, we want to be part of the party as well. With our Play Equity Fund charitable partner, it's a 5-year partnership focused on 2 things. One, leadership and advocacy skills, so working with high school students, primarily athletes, to help them develop leadership skills, advocacy skills, to understand inequities within their communities. And then the Play Equity Fund is advancing those systemic changes, like we just got a recess bill signed by Governor Gavin Newsom. So recess in all public schools within the state of California now have to mandate recess, and it can't be taken away for bad behavior. Go figure. It wasn't mandated, and you can take it away for the kids who actually need recess. Suffice it to say, it's now law, and the students in the Alliance program helped us advocate for the legislature to pass that, and we're doing some work as a result of that bill. And then the second is to give young people in the programs exposure to careers in sports, in the sports industry. And we're in our 3rd year, and it's just been extraordinary, the internships that they give, the exposure that they give, because the reality is the team said we want to see a more diverse front office. But I didn't know when I was growing up that I could be a senior VP for the Los Angeles Dodgers, because I wasn't particularly good at baseball. So through this program, the kids are actually engaging with executives, engaging with entry-level people, and it's now widening their aperture of what's possible, that they don't just aspire to be on the field as a player, but they're actually starting to aspire to say, maybe at some point in my life I could be an owner or a founder of a sports club. And so that's the impact that the Alliance has had. Seattle has modeled our partnership and formed an alliance last month. We're talking to Las Vegas and DC about forming a similar partnership. So again, that multiplier effect with Los Angeles leading the charge with just an extraordinary group of sports teams here in the city.
But Julie, I'm going to flip it back around to you, but I think you're hearing kind of a common theme that we're all using these major sporting and entertainment events for the greater good in the community, and I think it's really interesting. And Julie didn't mention as part of this because she's the moderator, but she also is the founder of the newest professional sports team in the city, the Angel City Football Club. Why don't you tell us what is different about your club and what has made you guys kind of shoot to the top? I mean, you guys are a role model for a lot of teams coming in now on how you set yourself up.
Mold.
Well, before I share that, I will tell you. So, Kathy, how long have you had your role?
25 years.
25 years. So, when we had the idea to bring a women's professional soccer team to Los Angeles, you can imagine how people received that. There are 11 professional sports teams in LA. There's USC and UCLA. There's the beach. There's the mountains. There are 2 professional men's football teams, soccer teams, also football, soccer teams in LA. And 10 years ago, there was a women's team that folded, and all of the excuses go on and on. So as we're percolating the idea and how it's going to come to life, everyone's like, you have to talk to Kathy. Like she is the queen of sports in LA. You have to talk to Kathy. You have to get her advice. You have to get her on board. And I remember I just finished a meeting with LAFC, who's based down here in downtown LA, and I was driving home on the 10 freeway, which is similar to the Disneyland parking lot. You don't go anywhere very fast. And I introduced myself to Kathy, and I told her what I was doing. And you know when you can tell, you guys pitch at people all the time, you know when you tell when you're talking to someone, they're like, this isn't going well? Like, I know in her head, she's like, you gotta be kidding, not another team, no way. I could just tell by the cadence in her responses that this was not an easy sell, and she wasn't immediately like, yes, do it. But at the end of our 45-minute conversation, I'd flipped her because she was willing to make introductions. And it was incredible. And I think the reason that I flipped her is because the way that we wanted to bring Angel City to market was so different. Angel City is a women's professional soccer football team based here in Los Angeles, part of the National Women's Soccer League, which is now in its 11th year. Back in 2019, if you weren't a huge women's soccer fan, you probably didn't know the NWSL existed. You certainly didn't know where to go to watch it. Maybe it was on ESPN, maybe it was on Lifetime, maybe it was on Yahoo Sports. So you had to work really hard to be a fan of professional women's soccer. And so we decided to bring a team to LA. By we, it also didn't look like traditional owners. It's 3 female founders, myself, an entrepreneur, Natalie Portman, the actress and activist, and a woman by the name of Karen Norman, who's more in line with your business, who's a venture capitalist. Not your traditional billionaire family, private equity company, oil tycoon who has money to play with, right? Actually, 3 women who have no sports experience whatsoever. 3 of us that do not have never had a role in sports. But we were so moved by Natalie initially with the work she did in Hollywood with the Me Too movement, driving for equal access and opportunity to women, coupled with the work that both Natalie and Kara did with the Time's Up movement, driving for equal pay and equal equity for the U.S. women's national team that did not receive pay equity with the men's national team, and yet every 4 years they prove how much better they are. And then finally by a talk that Abby Wambach had at the ESPN ESPY Awards. She was receiving the Icon Award with Kobe Bryant and Peyton Manning. So the 3 best athletes in the world, and being recognized as icons. And Abby gave a speech when she left the stage. She had this incredible epiphany, which was, we've all reached the apex of our careers. We've achieved every goal we've ever wanted to achieve in our professional sports lives. And Kobe and Peyton have to figure out where to spend their hundreds of millions of dollars. And I have to go get a job because I need health insurance and I need to pay a mortgage. And the inequity of that really drove Natalie to say, if we want to affect change, if we want our kids to grow up in a world that we're proud of, we need to have a seat at the table. So the idea was to bring a women's professional sports team to LA. Because our roots really came out of this concept of gender equity, pay equity, equal access and equal opportunity, 2 things were very clear from us at the beginning. One is, we wanted mission to be core to the business of Angel City. We wanted to build an organization where mission and capital coexist. Truly what Renata said is, we want to do good and do well. The second part is, we want to be profitable. People don't believe that women's sports is investable. They don't believe that there's strong enterprise value. They don't believe people will watch women's sports. So we wanted to prove everybody wrong, that not only could we have a positive impact in our community and set higher expectations, but we could do it in a way that's profitable and drive real value of women's sports. So we decided that that's what we were going to do. And then the next thought I had was, I don't have any idea how to do that. I've never led an organization with mission. Profit, I can figure that out. I know what the ins and outs are of a football team, but how do you lead with purpose, and how do you use purpose to drive a larger goal, which for us is really equity? Using sports to drive attention to equity, gender equity, pay equity. Using sports, which is a community building activity where you can create a sense of belonging, where together you can do more than you do individually. And so very, very early on, after Kathy sort of gave us the thumbs up, we then got introduced to Renata. This is your favorite story.
I have to tell this favorite story. So Kathy calls me and says, "Hey, I want you to meet my friend Julie Ehrman. In the Cone of Silence, she's thinking about bringing a women's soccer club to Los Angeles." I was like, "What? There's already 11 teams, UCLA, USC." She's like, "No. Hear her out." So Julie and I have a conversation, we set up a meeting, and she says, can I come and see you? You know, I want to share this vision that I have. And I said, sure. Now, side note, my husband and my 2 sons are huge Star Wars fans. I think I saw the original like 15 times. We have an original poster signed by Darth Vader. Grogu is my favorite, you know, on my pillows everywhere. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. So I'm familiar with what's going on because I'm paying attention to sports. And so Julie comes in, I'm sitting in the little sitting room at my office, and she walks in, but I see this woman behind her that has on jeans, a t-shirt, and these dope Jordans. And I'm a sneakerhead. I don't have them on today because I have to go to an event. And I'm like, those are some really dope Jordans. And so as I look up, I say to myself, please don't call her Queen Amidala. Please don't call her Queen Amidala. It's Natalie Portman. And they sat down and said, we want to talk about the soccer club. They didn't have the license. They were still working to actually get the expansion team. And I sat down and listened to what they had to say. And they said, we really want to build this from the community up. Can you help us? And I asked a question. I said, do you want to have immediate impact or do you want to have long-term impact? And you said?
Both. And that's what we've been doing. It's been incredible. We've been building for 4 years. We're in our second. We just finished our second year playing. We made the playoffs, which was very exciting. But more importantly, when we try to build an organization with mission, we realize that if we're really going to be authentic, we have to have impact with everything we do, with every decision. So from the beginning, we've never sacrificed, impact for profit. And one way that we show that is we created the Angel City sponsorship model, where we give 10% of our sponsorship dollars back into the community to address equity through essentials and education. And to date, we put $2.3 million to work in the community, and within 5 years, we'll put over $5.5 million to work as of today. We've supported 19 different organizations. With DoorDash alone, we've given out 1 million meals to address food insecurity in that last mile. I think the common theme here is that we're using sports to create a legacy of impact that far surpasses the event. Our season is over. We have a farmers market later this week. We do 250 events a year. And so it's how do you build community and leverage this community to give impact.
But talk about how you're doing well. Attendance, apparel,
yeah, so this is the part that no people that sat in your seat didn't get. Which is how can you give money away and make money? Like how can you have a goal of doing well and making money? And so I cannot tell you, we announced the Angel City sponsorship model, and we had other team CEOs call us and be like, what are you doing? Like, how can you be giving money? You haven't even gotten money. You have no sponsors. You've not sold a single ticket. How are you possibly giving money away before you've even gotten it? And it blew their minds. And part of what was great about Angel City, and as I said earlier, I always say it's like the beginning of a joke. You have an actress, a venture capitalist, an entrepreneur walk into a bar, right? Somehow they end up with a women's professional sports team. But the fact that we didn't have experience meant we could do it differently. And so by leading with purpose, by trying to find value-aligned sponsors and saying, okay, we're going to take 10% of our impact and we're going to do coaching for young adults, and we're going to document it, we're going to create content all year round. Oh, and by the way, that's worth $250,000. And you know what? We don't negotiate, because if you negotiate with us, that means you actually don't care about the impact. That means you don't care about the value. And so it was a really interesting calling card for how we walked in the rooms. But the net result of that is, in our first year and now in our second year, we have 16,500 season ticket holders, which is more than 4 professional men's sports teams in LA. We've sold out BMO Stadium 5 times, which seats 22,000 fans. We have the highest sponsorship revenue of anybody in the NWSL, and are probably in the bottom 1/3 of the MLS, with over 55 million committed over the next couple of years. We have the highest ticket revenue, we have the highest scan rate, we have the highest attendance, we have the largest community, and obviously we've given more back to the community than many, many, many people.
Drop the mic. Round of applause for that.
And we keep doing it, and that's what's so incredible about how we've sort of built Angel City. And truly, the proof is in the pudding. I do not think we'd have the revenue that we have if we were not focused on purpose. I do not think we'd have the ticket base that we have if they didn't feel that joining and supporting Angel City was bigger than just supporting 11 players on the pitch.
I'm a big fan. And your valuation that just was released?
Well, Sportico says we're worth $180 million, which I think is pretty good. I was a little light. Yeah, I mean, we are the most, I mean, at that valuation, we are the most valuable women's team in the world in any sport.
And if I can add on, Kathy, I'd be interested in your perspective in terms of those who are investing in these major sporting events, is that sponsors are looking at ways to authentically engage with their customers. And there's no more authentic way in which to engage with your customers when you are seeing the diversity that is at Angel City Football Club game or Dodger games or insert any game, the Super Bowl, is that your customer is there within the stadium. But how are you, again, the multiplier effect, reaching those customers where they live? And sponsors are now being held accountable by this next generation to say, is Heineken, is Bank of America, is Verizon, are they in my community where I live and helping to level the digital divide? Are they investing in programs that I care about? And so it becomes a win-win situation for the sponsors as well. And then when you think about these major sporting events, to be able to do that on a global scale, I think that's what's driving a lot of these events and a lot of the social impact that is a result of those events.
Kathy, it is possible that we will have the FIFA championship game here in Los Angeles. How do you think about another really big event that's different than the Super Bowl, right? A different audience, is a global sport. So as you're doing your planning as far as the event within the legacy, what do you get excited about? What would be like a win for you?
Yeah, just for everybody's, in case you've been following in the media, so we are still a potential host city for the FIFA World Cup. We are looking at trying to host the opening matches. We are still negotiating with FIFA, so that's what the media attention has been the last few weeks, because in order for us to make this worthwhile to spend the money to bring the event here, it has to make this huge impact on the community. So we're already talking about whether we're doing soccer fields or whatever. So there's a bunch of things that we want to do in the community, but we want to make sure if we are bringing 6 or 8 matches here during the World Cup, international scale event, a lot of visibility, that we are engaging the whole community. So there's a lot of thinking going on, Julie, on how do we, it's not about the people who are buying tickets to anything, it's the fan fest and the watch parties. How are we bringing in the community and using this big event to really make an impact on the kids, the community, and using soccer to really do good.
Okay, we have the Olympics coming in 28. We absolutely know that. What can the Olympic Committee of 28 learn from the LA 84 Foundation, and what would you like to see the legacy of this Olympics be?
Softball question. Thank you. I think in some ways they have taken the lesson from the 84 Foundation, and when Casey Wasserman and then Mayor Eric Garcetti were bidding for the Olympic Games, they wanted to make a legacy in Los Angeles or an impact leading up to the Games. And so when the IOC, the International Olympic Committee, did this extraordinary thing and award 2 cities at the same time, they normally award one bid city the Games, and then you bid the next time. And if you follow the news of the International Olympic Committee, less cities were bidding, and so they said, let's do this 2 award bid. And so Paris took the Games in 2024. It's their 100th anniversary. The last time that they held the Games in Paris were 100 years ago. Obviously, I can't do the math. You guys are the math people. That's a hard one. Well, I have a cold, and I'm trying to think about how I'm going to answer this question. And then we took the Games in 28. And because of the additional 4 years that we had to wait, because you have to have an organizing committee with staff to kind of plan out venue contracts. There's a lot of work that goes into hosting an international, event with countries all over the globe. They got an acceleration on the share that the IOC gives to a host city. So $160 million came to the organizing committee, and they committed up to $16 million a year to the city's Recreation and Parks Department to reduce program fees to young people to increase sports participation. And so paying attention to the visible legacy that exists still with LA 84 Foundation in this region, they said, what can we do to sort of add to and help expand sports participation for young people throughout the city? What I hope for the legacy is, I think the theme for our panel has been the multiplier effect. Certainly, it is way too soon. And I think we all need to give grace to LA 28. I think the price tag is $7 billion, $8 billion, something like that. Is in the billions of what they have to raise to host the world here in Los Angeles. And so the prospects of will you have a surplus, will you have money left over, is far too. I mean, Tokyo was counting. If you think about Tokyo, if they were counting their chips, and then COVID happens, and then it's a year later, and they were successful in putting the games on despite those challenges. So you have to wait and see what happens within the economy. Our hope is that there will be resources left over to expand that multiplier effect. But it's more challenging for host cities to do what we did in LA in 1984 because the top sponsorship. So Peter Uberoff and the team created these extraordinary measures in which they raised that money to put on the games and then have a surplus. One was the top sponsorship, so we had less sponsors, but they had categories exclusive. So you guys will recall McDonald's, Coke, Eastman, Kodak. So they were less sponsors, but they raised more money because they owned that category. The other is monetizing everything. So the Torch Relay raised $10 million for the organizing committee. Peter had this concept of selling a kilometer of each of the Torch Relays starting in New York, and then each nonprofit that bought that kilometer could then use it as a fundraiser for their organization. Multiplier effect. We were able to raise $10 million for the organizing committee. Nonprofits were able to raise money for their organizations. And then the largest of the contract, it was the first exclusive televised Olympic Games. And so there was a competition with ABC, NBC, and CBS, and ABC had to bid to be the exclusive broadcaster for the Olympics, and that was the largest aspect. And so now the IOC, those innovations that Peter and team put in 1984 have become the IOC's game plan. So 40% of the revenue that the International Olympic Committee generates is from the innovations that were created in 1984. So they give a share to each host city from the broadcast, from the top sponsors, but you're not able to raise money from those sponsors, and so it becomes a little bit more challenging for cities to raise the billions of dollars that's necessary. And so I hope, again, to answer your question, there's a multiplier effect. There is money left over, and that we can continue to expand opportunities for young people to experience what we believe is a transformational power sport.
So we've had NASCAR in the Coliseum. You guys have seen the Coliseum? They created a NASCAR race, a quarter mile in there. I think it was the loudest event ever recorded. And Formula One seems to be making its way through the U.S. We're in Austin. We're in Miami. Soon we'll see the Vegas course. So happy. Of all the amazing events that have not been to Los Angeles yet, what would you love to have here?
Question. We did look at Formula One, but it was just incredibly expensive for our city. So we have to continue to look. We pretty much in this decade of opportunity, we've been talking about that we are going to host every major sporting event in Los Angeles from 2022 to 2028. U.S. Open, every All-Star game. We have 2 other bids that haven't even come out that are going to be during this period of time. So Julie, we've gotten everything. I think one of the things we really wanted to see here that had not been here in, 75 years was the U.S. Open, which we just hosted at LA Country Club this summer. Now we have 2 more coming. And then we have a U.S. Women's Open coming to Riviera Country Club, another Men's Open coming to Riviera as well. So, and then another one again at LA Country Club in 2039. Yeah,
32 and 39. So we have a women's
already planned for 2039. So get your tickets right now. But I think we have been very blessed to have almost every major event every event we've gone after, we've gotten, and we're having here, and that's an incredible. So now it's just making sure again that we deliver a good experience, and we make sure you generate the economic impact and the community impact and opportunities for people. Because I got to tell you that during Super Bowl, one of the most fun evenings for me was we hosted a networking event for the 200 Business Connect, the local diverse suppliers. And we hosted it, and these people, I remember this one couple who had a floral shop came up to me and said during the program they had been able to expand from their one floral shop to adding another one, and that their business, and just people coming up and hugging you saying how much being an official part of the NFL Super Bowl program, was helping their business and helping them, expand, and they were just thrilled, and that makes you feel good. It's not being able to get tickets for your friend, on the 20-yard line, the 30-yard line, whatever.
I like that though. That's what.
Yeah, that's what you asked for. But no, it wasn't about that. And of course, those requests come. The game comes and goes, but the the impact that it made on these local businesses was really makes you feel like you're doing some good work for your community. And that's, I think, at the end of the day, we always are looking for, everybody's always looking for an opportunity to kind of get their hands dirty and actually do something. They don't want to just sit on a board. They don't want to just, donate money, although we do need money for all the causes that we're doing. But a lot of people want to get involved and help. And there's a lot of ways you can do it and get your hands dirty and get involved and really make an impact on someone's life.
One of the really interesting stories about Business Connect is Gwen Bolden. You want to talk about Gwen Bolden? No, it's Gwen. Wasn't it Gwen Bolden? Olympian.
No, Jeanette.
Jeanette Bolden?
Yeah.
Yes, Jeanette Bolden. Okay.
Oh, that's a great story. So anyway, so one of our favorite stories is one of the applicants. She had a bakery called 27th Street Bakery here, and just a lovely lady, Olympic athlete, great story.
She was a gold-winning athlete from the 1984 Olympic Games that we had no idea about, and went to the Business Connect.
Yeah, and she, so part of what Business Connect does, in addition to trying to get opportunities, is to get media and attention for these companies so that will lead to opportunities. So we were telling her story to somebody in the media. They wrote a story about it in the LA Times. And then the president of what was Staples Center, now Crypto.com Arena at the time, he's on our board. He called me up. He said, hey, I just saw that great story about Jeanette and 27th Street Bakery. Will you connect me? Because I want to see if she wants to come and sell her pies at Staples Center. So we connected. She ended up selling pies on there. If you remember the dessert carts that go around at the arena, and then also had a concession stand at the arena as well. So an opportunity she never would have even ever had an opportunity to get in front of, but because of that media attention, that raised her profile, and we were very excited about that one.
Which sport did she play? Track and field.
Also, the answer to your question is the National Women's Soccer League Championship game. I just want to be clear. When you get asked that on the next panel. Yeah.
I thought you were going to Formula One downtown.
We'll get me in the championship first, and then you can have any other event you want. We have about 9 minutes left, which means 9 minutes until cocktails. Any questions? You guys have questions? Yes, amazing, thank you.
So one of the
enunciate like my grandmother used to say.
I can speak real loud.
There we go.
So one of the cool things I remember about the 84 games, besides it being the best 2 weeks ever to live in Los Angeles because there was no traffic. Thank you.
They just don't want you to have a mic.
Now can you? Besides, because there was no traffic, was I guess you could call it the infrastructure legacy. I think about the pool up at the Rose Bowl. I mean, it even goes down to the track at Loyola High School. Are there any plans for any kind of an infrastructure legacy like that for the 28 games?
There aren't. We have abundance of riches of facilities. So when you think about the 84 games, I think we built 3 new venues in 84. We did improve some of the infrastructure that you mentioned. The Coliseum, they're going to bring the track back because of the way the renovations happen for football. And they actually, I think they're going to, don't quote me on this, but when they were bidding for the Olympic Games, they're going to actually have the track elevated. And so the training facility or the training track will be underneath. And so when the medals are presented, they're going to rise from the bottom of the track and come into the stadium, which I think is cool. I think that there's some improvements at Sepulveda Basin. Archery and rowing, I believe, is at the Sepulveda Basin, so there's some improvements that will happen there. But because we have so many facilities across the region, not just in the city of Los Angeles, this is going to be more of an athlete and technology-led games. And a sustainable games.
But I will say that one of the plays to when Mayor Garcetti was in office is he had this 28 for 28, which was 28 transportation and infrastructure projects that they wanted to get done before 28. And that's what I always tell people: if you're not a fan of the sport or the event, but you're a fan of our city, you want these events to come, because an event like the Olympics, it speeds everything up that we need to get done. There's a deadline, and they get guaranteed they will get it done before all this media attention descends on Los Angeles. So if for nothing else, if you're not excited about the community impact, everything else, the infrastructure stuff will get done because of events like 2028.
And just one example on that, I was the deputy mayor for Jim Hahn when the consolidated car rental was trying to get approved. over at LAX, and the community shut it down. It was like, no, we're not going to have a consolidated car rental, we're not going to have a people mover, and the fact that we actually have it under construction is going to be opening, I believe, next year, it is a testament to what Kathy meant. When you have a goal in mind and you know you have to bring hundreds of thousands of people to your city and you need to move them and have them have a good experience, it motivates folks to get things done.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, sure. Actually, my friend here asked this question, but so we heard some of Julie's backstory and how she accomplished getting LA City up and running. But Catherine, it seems like you've accomplished. You and the organization have accomplished a lot. It's a non-profit, being able to get all these sports teams in. You said you've been there for 25 years, so we're wondering. How did you accomplish so much? How did the organization get so powerful, especially being a non-profit and getting all this attention?
So we have a lot of good friends helping support us. We're very, very lucky and have the support of the teams and the venues and just amazing board members. And I feel very blessed that way. But I think because it is a nonprofit, people are excited about the sport. They're excited about something. I mean, if you're not interested or excited about sports and entertainment, there's not a lot of others. There's got to be something there in some hooks. So we've had a lot of help to get where but we also, we stay lean and mean. We don't want to waste a lot of people's money. We don't want to waste a lot of people's time. But it's important that we get this work done, and I think everybody's bought into our vision and is helping us. So you can't do it by yourself. But we've got, I think, probably one of the best boards in the city, and everybody is contributing.
Okay, so any other questions? All right, so final question, because we're talking about the multiplier effect. So to each of you, what's the one thing that our attendees can do to have impact in their communities, whether it's around sport or impact? Like, what would be the one thing you'd say to them, how they could get involved?
So again, raising your hand and getting involved. And again, I always tell people, it's funny, when I first started this job and we talk to people, well, I'm not interested in that sport, I'm not interested. That's not about the sport, it's about what it's going to do for the city. So just being here today and learning more about the programs. I'm guessing you probably didn't know a lot about the programs we have, this Business Connect program, LA84, and what they're doing with these sports. There's so many opportunities to get involved, and so I just, raise your hand, and there are opportunities to get out there and support what we're doing, because we feel this is really good for our city.
Yeah, I'd echo the same thing, be informed and be involved. I think to Kathy's point, you might think, wow, this is sports, I'm not a sports fan. But all of you work for business, you own a business, you invest in businesses. It's like, made me think about BMO Stadium. But BMO is looking to, they are in the LA market, but looking to expand their brand presence. So when they partner with Angel City Football Club, they do a partnership with LA Parks to expand and grow its programming. Now they're in the community that amplifies or multiplies the TV commercials that they're now doing so that their customers know that they're aware. You have, I assume, folks that want to invest in businesses. So when you think about Jeanette Bolden, not Gwen Bolden, but you think about Jeanette Bolden and the 250 businesses that are now getting opportunities to scale within the Business Connect program, well, that's an opportunity to get in early. I mean, when you think about believing in three founders and saying, hey, when Angel City or sports teams are looking for investors, that you now know that it's a good investment when done in the right way, by doing well and doing good. And so I think there is certainly the excitement around sports, the excitement around social impact, but there's also the excitement around revenue opportunities, growth opportunities that you individually, you as businesses and you as those that you work with, have an opportunity to tap into when you think about these extraordinary events that are coming, not just over the next decade, but I think long into the future.
Buy a hat. Buy a ticket. For Angel City Football Club for women's sports, right? We need, if I want to get to pay equity, I have to go to the revenue, right? There is some tie between the two.